Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Today is Thursday. It's the 1st of June, 2023. Man, the year is flying already. We were talking before the show about how hot it is in Minnesota. It may hit the 90s today. It may have yesterday, but some 90s are in the forecast, I'm sure. And the amazing thing is that we all have learned to enjoy the 90s because we know it's coming very quickly. And then that'll be back to the 20 and 30 below. So if you're like me, I hope you're enjoying every second of the heat and figuring out ways to keep the memory of the heat to get you through the cold winters, wonderful cold winters that we have here in Minnesota as well. Well, as always, I want to thank you for watching the program. I invite you to subscribe to our program by going to the Insight News YouTube channel, Insight News MN, YouTube Insight News MN. Hit the subscribe button, like it, and share. We're trying to get 1,000 subscribers. I'd like for you to be one of them, and I'd like for you to help me get 10 more. And so you could be connecting to this program on any of several platforms outside of the YouTube Insight News channel. We are in partnership with the Black Press of America. We're streaming live at the YouTube Black Press USA. And we thank all of the people who connect us with us through there. But we're also on Black Press USA's Facebook page. We're on the Insight News Facebook page. We're on the Al McFarlane Facebook page. We're streaming as well to the Twitter, Insight News Twitter, and to our LinkedIn page. Wherever you are, we thank you. We thank you. We thank you. We want you to get closer, and you get closer by subscribing. Subscribe, like, and share. Help us reach our goal. We want 1,000 subscribers, and one of them can be you, and 10 of them can be you and 9 friends. Help us out. We want to also begin by acknowledging and saying that the program is made possible with the support of the Minnesota Department of Health. We're working with them in partnership with them to encourage our people to remember that even though the nation's COVID-19 pandemic has been declared over, the risks still exist. And so what does it mean? It means you still need to think about the protocols. What can you do? Like wash your hands and to keep checking your temperature. If you got sniffles, runny noses, stuff like that, stay away from people. Get well, get healthy. And we are working with the health department to promote messages that invite people to be mindful, to keep thinking about the need to stay aware for COVID prevention, and also to be aware of resources in the community to get tested and to get treatment. So think and be mindful, be intentional. Look at Insight News and you'll see these wonderful graphic messages about how you can make sure that you are top of mind, being careful, purposeful, and focusing on remaining healthy. Well, today we're going to talk about books, a book in particular, and I'm pleased to have my friend and colleague, I call him my companion, Thursday Show's companions, and Brother W.D. Foster Graham is the books review editor for Insight News and always connects us with things he's written or works of other authors from here or around the country, and elevating the affinity that we have with books, with reading as a people. Too often some media will have you believe that Black people and books don't go together, that we don't read, and that all we do is listen to radio, and we listen to radio or watch TV, and we watch TV, but we also read, and we always have read, and we always valued the power, the freedom, the liberation that comes from the capacity to read and understand and to decode existence. Books help you decode existence itself. Reading helps you decode existence itself. Well, with that in mind, let me invite my brother, Brother W.D. Foster, on to talk about and introduce our guest for today's program. Hey, man, good to see you.
Good afternoon, Al. Great to be here one more time.
All right. So, who we got today?
Well, June 1st is Pride Month. So as a brother who stands at the intersectionality of both African American and LGBT communities, it is my great pleasure to introduce another brother who represents those communities, our guest author, Wyatt O'Brian Evans. Wyatt is that Renaissance man. He's a journalist, and his articles have appeared in Huffington Post, Advocate, Washington Blade, to name a few. He is a radio personality from Washington, D.C., and he also has a media following through WyattEvans.com. It's a podcast where he does interview interesting and amazing personalities in the community. And I had the honor of being on his podcast when my first romance novel, The Right to Be, was released. And it was just a pleasure to have exchange of ideas with him. I appreciate everything that he's doing in the community, and I appreciate his unique literary voice because he is also an author. The book we'll be discussing today is the third book in his Nothing Can Tear Us Apart series called Shattered. So I'll be the first to say, it brings the 1-2 punch of a daytime soap opera on the black side. And at the same time, addresses certain issues that affect the community. So my great pleasure and honor to introduce to you Wyatt O'Brian Evans.
Welcome. Good afternoon, man. Good to have you here.
Well, listen, Al and WD, thank you so much for having me on the show. And I also need to say, give thanks to Insight News because you guys have really been supporting the book. Mm-hmm. And before I go further, I have to say two things directed to WD. Mm-hmm. First of all, I need to hire you for my PR guy. That was an excellent, concise, wonderful introduction. And then number two, and you know what I'm going to do? Tito, give me a tissue. Remember Michael Jackson?
Mm-hmm.
I had to get those two things in there.
All right.
But seriously, thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Well, let's get the conversation set with watching the trailer. Excellent. Well done. Let's check that out first, and then we'll come back and start talking. That's pretty cool. That's pretty tough, man. So tell us about the book. And this is going to be, look, brothers, this is a conversation between us. And our rules here, Brother Wyatt, is that we're seeking each to elevate each other, right? And to ask questions that help us gain clarity and bring our best presentation to ourselves and to the world. I love this radio and TV and media, this format of interview, because the way I approach it is that, the three of us are talking to each other, but we're talking with an audience of potentially the whole world. And that makes it really, really rich and meaningful. And it also keeps us aware that everything we say has to have the weight of the moment and the weight of our acknowledgement that we are talking to the world itself. As we should. It's our duty. So, brother, talk about what the book is about, first of all, in the story, and give the backstory on the book.
Well, no pressure on me, right, Al? Okay, well, um, I write a series of novels called Nothing Can Tear Us Apart. And the latest installment is Shattered. And the genres are LGBTQ, ethnic, and psychological thriller. And the themes are intimate partner violence and abuse, which is domestic violence and abuse within the LGBTQ plus community. Another theme is a explosive relationship between a father and son, which is very central to the book, and also to mental instability. But the story goes like this. You have two masculine men of color in a monogamous relationship. They're doing everything they can to keep that relationship alive and thriving. And you've got Wesley, who is this openly gay, same gender loving, wealthy entrepreneur celebrity. Then you have his intimate partner by the name of Tonio. Tonio is this deliciously muscular Latino. He's his chief of security. What happens is they take their time, they fall in love. So it's not an immediate, get to the bed. They realize they have similarities and values and all of that great stuff in common. They establish their monogamous relationship. Unfortunately, Wes is set up. Antonio believes that Wes is cheating. So because of Tonio's emotional issues, deep insecurities, he batters Wes. So that's the intimate partner violence and abuse piece of it. So Wes kicks him to the curb. But meanwhile, Wes finds out that he has a son that he never knew existed. See, back in the day, Wes was struggling with his sexual orientation. He didn't want to deal with the fact that he was really gay, same gender loving. So what Wes did, like a lot of men do, is he develops this relationship with a woman and that relationship is supposed to be monogamous. However, Wes falls for this guy. They have this affair. The woman finds out, kicks Wes to the curb. There's a lot of juicy dialogue when that happens. She ghosts him, she leaves him, but what she doesn't tell him is that she's pregnant with his child, right? So the son grows up believing that Wes abandoned him and his mother. He finds Wes. The boy's a homophobe, and he's hell-bent on destroying the relationship between Wes and Tonio. So the central question is, can they ever say that nothing can tear us apart?
Wow. Woo.
Now, I'm excited about it. I'm glad to be here to talk about it. It's getting solid, strong reviews because it's resonating in connecting with the LGBTQ plus and also the heterosexual audiences, because basically you have these two individuals who have this deep, enduring, abiding love for one another, and they're doing everything they can to make it work. And that resonates and connects with practically anybody.
And you've got the question of the conflict between a man and his wife early on in their career, and the question of that man and his son, and the son's opposition to the father's orientation. All those are huge, huge questions that you've laid out for us to examine and think about, reflect on, is what it sounds like to me.
I totally agree. When you're writing a sequel, when you're continuing a series of books, as WD well knows with his successful works, you've got to put something new in the mix, or either you have to stop right there. So I wanted to bring in the son, this explosive father-son dynamic, just to see how that would play out. And I'm really getting a lot of great feedback about that.
So this is the third in the series, right?
Right.
Give us, the elevator speech on the first two so we know how you got to this one, and you might tell us where you're going to go next, And then I'm going to ask you to talk about you, Wyatt O'Brian Evans, because I want to see what universe brought both the will, the intent, the knowledge, the passion, and the courage, right, to paint this picture that comes out as fiction, but I'm sure everything comes from somewhere. I want to go into that with you.
Okay, sure. Elevator pitch: two upperly mobile men of color fall in love. However, they face serious obstacles to their monogamous relationship, including intimate partner violence and abuse, and a contentious father-son dynamic. So can they both say, can nothing...
No, is this the first book? The first book or the...
Well, actually, books 1 and 2, they're
Okay.
they both flow together.
Got it. Okay.
So that's the basic 25-word elevator pitch that I would give.
Okay, cool. And WD, questions, comments?
Well, the question I would have is, what did you draw upon in terms of, observations and experiences in creating this series? Because the issues of mental health and intimate partner violence, those are powerful issues.
Yeah. I think that an author is truly successful when he draws upon real life experiences and does his research. So when I decided to write a book, begin the series more than 10 years ago, I said, I want to talk about something substantive and an issue that really impacts the LGBTQ plus community, and that's intimate partner violence and abuse. The acronym is IPVA, and that's just simply domestic violence and abuse within the LGBTQ plus community. And when I was in college, I went to the George Washington University. My first partner, who went to Howard, abused me. And it was basically, first of all, let me back it up a little bit. IPVA has 3 components: the emotional, the mental, the physical. With me, my partner abused me 90% mentally and emotionally. And the mental and the emotional has synergy. They're pieces of each other. And sometimes the scars from that type of abuse is longer lasting and more difficult to overcome than the physical. So fortunately, I was able to extricate myself from that situation. I got wonderful therapy, and I'm a strong proponent of therapy, particularly for Black people, because a lot of times we Black people don't want to deal with therapy.
Right.
And that's a whole nother conversation. So when I decided to write the novel, I said, I'm going to put that in there because I'd done research. As a journalist, I write a lot about intimate partner violence and abuse. I found that it's more common in our community, the LGBTQ plus community, than people want to talk about. So I said, I want to put that in there. So actually, I used that to develop the entire series because, again, the main theme is that, and also the aftermath of it, and how it can still affect you. And one thing that I did that was very important, I didn't gloss over it. I went to a therapist so I could figure out how to write about it correctly. And when you read the series, you will find out that they both, after Tonio, who batters Wes, after he acknowledges it, I didn't say, okay, they're going to become lovey-dovey and everything's okay. I put them through sessions of therapy with a psychiatrist, both one-on-one and also as a couple. So I integrated all of that in the novel because I didn't want people to think it's a quick fix. And I revisited it in Shattered as well, the whole aftermath of it. So I don't I didn't want the reader to think, okay, fine. They did it. He battered him, he forgave him, and everything's okay. No, it's a process that you've got to work through to heal individually and to heal as a couple if you want to maintain that relationship.
Take a minute, brother, and tell us what both emotional and mental violence were, how you brought that forth in the book, but what did you experience that you now classified or then classified as and recognized as mental violence and equally distinctly emotional violence? What does that mean?
Sure. And like I said, Al, is more common than people think because stats say that at least 1 in 4 LGBTQ plus relationships are abusive in some way. It could be mental, it could be emotional, it could be physical, it could be all three. With me, I grew up without a father. He died when I was very young, and I had a lot of self-esteem issues. And I didn't have that consistent father figure like an uncle or what have you to help, mentor me. So and then I was dealing with the sexual orientation because, I didn't want to be gay, but I knew I was. So I had all of those things in the mix. And when I met my first partner, the first love, everything was great initially, but he could soon see that I had some serious insecurity issues, and he just played upon that. And an abuser is like a shark in the water. If there's blood, that shark is going to go right after that blood. So what he would do is, again, most of my 90%, 85, 90% of what I went through was mental and emotional. So it was like keeping me away from family and friends, telling me what to do, when to do it, threatening to out me because I was closeted at that time. A lot of gaslighting, you're not good, nobody else will want you, that sort of thing. So it was a lot of these emotional, mental things that he put me through. And like I said, sometimes the emotional and mental leaves deeper scars than the physical.
And then when your relationships progressed to physical, what does that mean? And I'm asking from a point of, I think, naivety, but not at the same time, because people get on each other's nerves and they fight. But sometimes I think abuse is when it's not a fight, it's a one-sided affair. One person is fighting, the other person's the object of that violence. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Wow. You bring up a lot of points. Okay. First of all, the physical, it was mostly with me, emotional, mental. When it became physical, it was like pushing, shoving, grabbing me through the collar, that sort of thing, because he was physically bigger than me. So actually, he didn't have to do much to keep me in check on a physical basis because he was much bigger. He was a really muscled guy. The last straw was when it was this spring day, beautiful day. I was in the Safeway, right? Safeway food store in Metro DC, and he popped up on me and started to beat me. Luckily, I wasn't seriously injured, but I knew then and there I had to get the hell out. I had to extricate myself from that situation. So one of my brother-in-laws, who was a cop, put the fear of God in him. And we were living together at the time. So I moved out, and I think he was so scared of my brother-in-law that he said, I better, not do this again. And that's when I had these years of self-discovery. I got this wonderful therapist, psychiatrist, who helped me through it, helped me heal, and helped me to deal with, accept, and embrace my sexual orientation, because so much of that was the key to how that was A lot of that was a key as to why I was feeling as bad as I was, mentally and emotionally.
Okay. And so talk about the healing. I'm glad you talked about and write about this therapy.
Right.
I think that as Black people, we don't, and you said this, and I'm agreeing with you, don't take the time to give ourselves, avail ourselves of the knowledge that exists in the world, in the profession of psychology and therapy. And so, talk about more your therapy journey and then how you deliver that to audiences in the book. I'm curious as to if you've got a life story that is kind of in some way at the center of or a core direction for the creative output, the writing. Where do you find and how do you find pathways to not embellish but to broaden and to fully explore the impact of the ideas that are at the core of your experience that you're writing about?
Well, I had my ass on the couch for years. And I mean, I tell, and that's why I put the whole therapy piece in Frenzy, the predecessor to the new installment, Shattered.
Mm-hmm.
So I went through years of therapy. I was placed on antidepressants. That's another story that I might tell you in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
But it saved my life. And when I do seminars and workshops about intimate partner violence and abuse, I tell people that you really need therapy in order to heal.
Mm-hmm.
Your preacher can't help you pray it away, not unless the preacher or the minister has a degree in psychiatry or psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Then he or she can help you. But if he or she doesn't, you need a professional, because God all gave us knowledge in different areas to help each other. So it's really important to seek help, not just with intimate partner violence and abuse. So many of us Black men, gay, straight, or bisexual, are depressed.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us know that we are, but some of us don't. And, we overeat, we oversleep, we're promiscuous sexually. We have all of these things that indicate that we're depressed. And I liken therapists, I give this analogy when I do talks and speeches. Let's say, for example, WD and Al, that you broke your arm, right? You're not going to treat it yourself. You're going to go to the doctor, and he or she is going to give you meds and maybe put it in a cast, and you'll heal. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're crazy when you're getting therapy, but it's just a tool that you need to heal. And sometimes we need antidepressants. I was on antidepressants, and I'm going to tell you, it's a funny story. I'm going to clean it up. I was on Zoloft, right? And it made me feel better, but I noticed that after I couldn't ejaculate, right? That's the Zoloft. It was like months. That's the Zoloft. And so I went back to the therapist and said, did you know this? He said, well, yeah, we kind of, yeah, but yeah. I said, well, put me on something else. And it worked. So if you need antidepressants, I say, work with your therapist and make sure you know all of the sides, because some of them are not that good. But you need them. And like I said, I'm such a staunch proponent advocate, because therapy works. Sometimes you have to go through 1, 2, 3.
Right.
Therapists define your fit, but once you do, it will save your life. So I wanted to put that into Shattered as well.
Yeah.
In the whole series of books, actually.
Well, I just want to thank you again for what you've done and what you're saying. This is a good conversation, number one. I'm enjoying listening to you, learning what you're saying. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking about the fact that, and I'm always happy to talk about that, one of the things that makes me better is being in therapy as well. So I do therapy every Friday morning at usually 8 o'clock for an hour, and I have been for a few years, and I intend to continue for as long as my insurance company pays for it, right? And whether they do or not, I'm being facetious there.
Yeah.
It's that critically important for me, and I recognize the value of just being able to have someone that listens and raises the right kinds of questions or not, but it's a space where I feel safe to say what I think or what I have questions about or what I'm unsure about, or to, again, clarify my intentions and sometimes have those intentions or my statement of them challenged, but in a way that's not judgmental, that doesn't tell me or leave me feeling like I'm crazy, as you said, right? And so the point I'm making here, brothers, is that the more we, Black men and Black people, can talk about the value of healing, the value of healing our minds and our bodies, the better. And we owe it to ourselves and to each other and to the future to promote, elevate this idea of the capacity to heal and the necessity of engaging resources, therapy in the community to effect that healing lifestyle that we both deserve and that we can have. But we have to be free enough to ask for it, to seek it, and to embrace it, and keep trying if it doesn't work the first time. That's what I heard you just say.
I totally agree with you. And it is a safe space. And like I said, sometimes the first therapist doesn't work or the second one. You can't give up. You have to continue on until you find that fit, and you will find that fit. You really will.
Let me introduce you to one of our colleagues and team members. This is Brother Yogi Senna, who joins me regularly. He's the editor of one of our newspaper sections. The section's called Afrodescendientes, and he's joining us from Bahia in Brazil. Have you ever been to Brazil, Brother Wyatt?
No, but that's on my bucket list.
Okay. Hey, Brother Yogi, how you doing, man?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good. We're having a great conversation with this Brother Wyatt O'Brian Evans is an author and has the third in a series of books that we're discussing today. He's here at the invitation and with the support of W.D. Foster Graham, our books editor at Insight News. And, Brother Wyatt, let me talk about your career. You're a journalist, novelist, obviously. What else are you doing in the work world and community world, the activism or civic engagement world?
Ever since I was a little boy, I've wanted to write. I would write poems and short stories and what have you. So I decided I would be a journalist, and I've written for Huffington Post, Washington Post, The Advocate. I've created my own website, WyattEvans.com, which is a news, information, and entertainment site for the LGBTQ plus community and its allies. I do intimate partner violence and abuse workshops and seminars. Also, too, I have the Wyatt podcast. I had to get that in there. Wyatt. And I love doing it, man, because I love talking to people, and the podcast dissects, analyzes, explores issues that really impact the LGBTQ plus community and its allies. I have a broad section of guests. I can have journalists, authors, musicians, porn stars, all of that, because I like to touch upon all aspects of the LGBTQ plus community. So,
how distinct is that niche audience from the broader audience in your role as a journalist? You've several times now said you specialize kind of in creating content in that arena, but is that different from anything else, or what's the uniqueness of it?
Wow, that's a good question. because I'm same gender loving or gay, you know, that's what I want to do. You know, I want with WyattEvans.com, with the Wyatt podcast, I want to exhibit, examine, show these different parts of the LGBTQ community. I noticed particularly with the podcast, and I'm really happy about it, it's really growing quite quickly, and I'm getting even more heterosexual people listening. And they'll comment, you know, I didn't know this about the community. Wow, he was a very interesting guest. So yeah, I just, you know, being LGBTQ plus, I thought it was just essential that I would dedicate a website and the podcast and the book for that. And again, I'm proud to say that with the book in particular as well, my audience is growing, both heterosexual, bisexual, gay, same gender loving.
So what are the challenges? You know, all of us are dealing with the question, I believe, of race and racism and our presence in this hemisphere as a consequence of the transatlantic slave trade, our relationships with the power of European culture, European mindset. How does that show up in your work and in your experience? You talk about growing up, first of all. And did you grow up in DC or where did you grow up? Where was your home?
Yeah, I'm a native Washingtonian. So I was born and raised in the district, you know, in a predominantly Black area. You know, like I said, I lost my father when I was very young, and that really impacted me. And that's another reason why I dropped that whole explosive father-son dynamic in the new book, Shattered. I wanted to talk about that. As far as my writing is concerned, I consider myself, African-American first, and then gay, same gender loving. That's just how I feel. And so what I do in all of my writing and with the podcast and the website, I try to direct it to, you know, that from that perspective, from a Black, same gender loving, gay perspective. And also too, I tend to, I think, and WD, you can chime in and correct me if I'm wrong. I think more Black men are considering themselves same gender loving as opposed to gay. And I find myself gravitating more towards same gender loving, but whenever I write about the experience, I say gay / same gender loving, because I want to be as inclusive as I possibly can, if that makes sense.
Well, I would say that when it came to gay and same gender loving, I think it has to do with the community we're in. When it comes to the Black community, I'm going to hear more same gender loving in the LGBTQ community. If I'm going into the broader community that's white, then you're more likely to hear gay.
So what is the relationship? How in the LGBTQ community, how does the question of culture and of race show up? My sense would be that you know, the people who claim power and privilege because they are white can be gay and still claim power and privilege, and that still means that they work in a way that's adversarial to my humanity. And it means that my objective must always be to figure out ways to show up authentically myself and my full human self everywhere all the time. And in order for me to do that, Al McFarlane has to be comfortable recognizing every other human being's authentic presence and existence and right to be himself, herself, or their self everywhere all the time. But does the social structure allow that? Is the context, the social context that we're living in, one that says, oh, so you're a Democrat and you're a Republican, but you're still Black. And either way, though you've professed to be on one of our sides, we really don't want you on either side, right? We're going to keep you at a distance because there's something about your existence that threatens our existence. I'm just rambling, but take it from there, Brother Wyatt. What you think? And then I'm bring Yogi in this conversation. Let's add an international element to this as well.
Well, Al, I love your compound questions. I just love them. Okay, all right, but they're very good. You touch on a lot of points. About 10 years ago, there was a publication called Q Bliss, which was a gay LGBTQ plus website, very popular. It's defunct now. And I wrote a series of articles about that, about racism within the LGBTQ plus community. And I won a couple of awards. Through my research and just anecdotally, there is racism within the community. You have, because let's face it, and it's sad to say, the color of your skin is the first thing people see. Before you open your mouth, before any of it, particularly where white people are concerned, is the color of the skin. They'll dig deeper later. And from the research that I did and anecdotal, I've gone to parties where that's the case, where you have, not all, but you have too many people who say, oh, they have these preconceived notions just because the individual is brown or Black. And within our community, the LGBTQ plus community, unfortunately, you do have white men who fetishize Black men. They're not looking at the person. They're not looking within that person. What they see is the big black bucks, is that big black buck syndrome. And that's the only thing they want from you, is that. So to make a long story short, there is racism within the community. It simply is. And you'll have white people, some white people, because I don't want to generalize, you'll have some white people that say, white gay men, for example, that will say, we are a minority. We are a minority. But so if they are a minority, they should be able to understand and relate to Black men. Because Black men, Black folks are a minority. So to wrap up this piece, yeah, there is racism within the LGBTQ plus community. There definitely is.
Let me bring Brother Yogi Sena in. Yogi, what's the story within Afro-Latino Afro-Latino culture, as far as you can tell, maybe speaking specifically about where you live in Bahia, in Brazil?
Well, my knowledge is very superficial. I do have a nephew who is kind of a gay icon here. He's like a famous actor. And, I do perceive these same synergies, racist synergies, and it does replicates in every community or grouping of people. And here, is in certain way, I think Brazil is more liberal how approaches, or how receives the gay people, I think it's less hypocritical. I think perhaps not, maybe not more liberal, because also there's cases of violence. It is pervasive here. Uh, it's in a rate that is alarming. The killings of transgender people. So, um, yeah. To me, what the brother says is not a surprise to me, that there is also racism in the LGBTQ community. My oldest daughter, she is also from the community, and she lives in Europe, and um, she moved from France to Germany, because also of issues that she felt safer in Berlin than in Paris, where she did have an altercation with some people in the bus, and she defended herself physically, and some kind of weird law in France too. If you are in a situation of self-defense, if you harm the other one, you also prosecuted or something like that. So yeah, I am an ally. I just skipped my mind today, but I do have a shirt that I bought on Target that says ally, you know. So I'm an ally of the LGBTQ community because of the same issue of that you guys mentioned. Is how also I came to understand and be friendly towards the reivindications of women, right? Since I do belong to a minority,
Hmm.
uh, I it is imperative, if I am a thinking member of my minority, to be understanding and empathic of other minorities, and therefore with my growth as as a man, being shedding uh, those remnants, that sometimes we do have remnants uh, that we do without being aware, but and that's how I understand the struggle, and I came upon to support. And later, when you have close family members that are one of those,
Mhm.
so undoubtedly, again, if you are a normal thinking person, you can doesn't make sense any phobia or ism against any, you know. So yeah, that's
Michelle,
my.
Michelle Madison, who's one of our regular viewers, put a note in the comment section. Uh, Brother Evans, do you believe the struggle of the LGBTQ community is equivalent to that of the Black community? I'm sure you've heard that question a lot. Comes up. What's your response? What do you think?
Whoa. Oh boy, that's a sticky question. Okay. I believe that both communities historically have been discriminated against, have been marginalized, um, and we both have similar struggles. But this is what I will say, and it's what I'm going to say touches on what I've said a little while ago. Unfortunately, the first thing people see about an individual is color, particularly the group of individuals who historically have discriminated against you know, the marginalized community and harmed them in so many ways for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I'll say this as well. You know, your whiteness can hide your sexual orientation. So again, what I'm saying, it comes back to what you see from the jump. And unfortunately, the group that discriminates and practices racism, the first thing they see is color.
Jacoby.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. WD, what you think?
Well, I'm inclined to agree on things because when first thing I see is the color of my skin, and I also look at the fact that that racism, when it came to being Black and LGBT, I can remember an instance right here in Minneapolis, and I was say in my 20s. I go to a club, simple example, see the color of my skin, I'd have to present several forms of ID while white patrons just walked on by and nobody said anything. And also, there's this perception of that the continent of Africa is homophobic. And I was blessed to, at the Sankofa event that you were at, Al, and I spoke to a brother from Liberia. And I also talked to other brothers who are African born, and they basically told me that wasn't always the case before the colonialists came, that a homophobia was not part of Africa, it was brought to Africa. So, yeah,
that's a great point. Then let me bring this back to Brother Wyatt. I asked my guest a lot, Brother Evans, about the notion of the organization of the world right now, at least for the past 1,000 years or so, and along the lines of patriarchy. So what do you think about the question of the patriarchal model for the ordering of society? What is it in that hierarchy that is suppressive and stifling? And does that show up in the concerns that we're talking about broadly here? I think it does. I think you identified it, WD, and you've talked to it as well. But so I raised the question to have us talk about the solution. How do we get to where we dismantle the hierarchical, structural, systemic processes and attitudes that deny any of us the capacity to be our full and authentic self? What do you think, Brother Wyatt?
Oh, Al, that's really, really tough. I don't mean to be pessimistic. I just don't have any, with the conservative climate, you know, where black people and LGBTQ plus people are concerned, you know, trans people, conservatives, right wingers have made transgender people the boogeyman. Actually, I think probably, I don't know. You know, that brings me back to Reconstruction, you know, right after the Civil War, when that might have been the best shot for us for Black people to overcome. You know, back then you had so many Black congressional people. It was in that short space of time, there was like an enlightenment. It was like really trying to level that playing field. So Reconstruction just popped in my head right after the Civil War. But to make a long story short, I don't have the optimism that things are going to change a great deal. In some ways, we're going backwards. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Okay, well, listen, this is Pride Month. What you doing special?
Pride Month, what am I doing special? Well, WyattEvans.com is going to have articles, talking about the birth of Pride Month, talking about Black Gay Pride. The Wyatt show as well. The Wyatt podcast will have guests regarding that. And of course, I'm on the Shattered tour. So I got a lot of stuff going on, all connected with Pride.
Okay, here we go. WD, anything special that you want to call attention to?
Well, I got married during Pride Month, and so my husband and I will be celebrating our 13th wedding anniversary.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Listen, Wyatt, on my Friday show, I talked with Black psychiatrists, psychologists in a program we call the Healing Circle. And we talk about mental health, about stress, about oppression, about depression, all the things you brought up. So I'd be glad to invite you to come back and sit with a group of people that are the practitioners of the healing that you and I have talked about today, because I think it's just a great conversation. And the more we can talk about it, the better. That's what I think. So would you consider coming back to be on my show on a Friday sometime?
I'm in, my brother. Listen, thank you, first of all, for inviting me. And we just need to talk more about that.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. And so final question here, I got about a couple of minutes, is what do we do? Tell me what you think where we are in the Black community and our ability to value each other. That's been the theme of all the things I've raised. How do we intentionally celebrate and elevate, recognize the divinity of each of us, in each of us, and then carry out our daily lives inspired by our connection to each other? What do you think? And I raised the question because there is the question of homophobia in the Black community. You addressed it in the issue of the Son and the Father and other places. Where do we go to get the healing and to reflect, to be the healing?
Well, very good question, Al. We just have to be more open to it, because my belief is that God created me this way. God created me as gay, same gender loving, and there's nothing I can do about it. And I really believe that in most cases, that is true. So if you believe in God, you have to understand and accept that God made each of us differently. We're not all the same. And, we have to stop being crabs in a barrel. We have to embrace differences and work together as a community so that we can succeed and that we can progress. So much of it is stop worrying about what James and Bob are doing in the bedroom, in their own bedroom, in their private space, and just be open to the fact that, hey, they're hetero people, they're gay people, they're bisexual people. And
here we go. We got to leave it right there. We're out of time. Brother, good conversation. I want to say a word just saying that this program is made possible with the support of the Minnesota Department of Health, and we're focusing on keeping you aware of how to prevent COVID-19, how to also be mindful of testing and prevention like vaccinations. So pandemic is over, but the crisis still, not the crisis, but the challenges still exist. And let's keep a conversation going so that we all act with awareness. I'm Al McFarlane. Thanks to my guest, Wyatt O'Brian Evans. Thanks to W.D. Foster Graham. And thanks to Brother Yogi Sena. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
Thank you.